Folks, this is our open house, and Vern's got a short initial presentation, and later we'll hear from Mary Jean about expedition and Maurice about some conservation issues, and we'll do the drawing in about half an hour. So Vern, it's all yours.
Conversations.
All right, well,
was so compelled by his testimony.
this is something I threw together this afternoon, so here we go. Let's go with it. First of all, let's keep in mind that the park has been around for 40 years as of this year. I think that's a significant date from 83 to 23. They still don't have a management plan, but the park's been around for 40 years. But I also think something that's kind of significant is the Friends have been around for 10 years. It was actually incorporated as an Ontario nonprofit in 2014. So the organization has been here 10 years, which is a kind of a significant date. And I think it's well worth to keep that in mind. So where have we been? Where are we going? Well, I think we closed out the Outdoor Adventure Expo in the Twin Cities. That was a great venue for us to set up a booth and talk to people. They had a spring and a fall. We did both, but they've since closed, gone out of business. So I don't think we put them out of business. But my point of that is that we've tried to reach out to the paddling public. We've been to Canoecopia. And I think the thing that we should have done, and we hadn't done in a long time, was get to the Outdoor Adventure Show in Toronto. And so those were all important ways that we reach out to the public. And these booths that we staff it's all done by volunteers. So there's a big thank you to all the people that help make that possible, because it's a lot of work to haul the exhibit and stand there and ask questions and talk to people all day long, although it's also very rewarding. So that's part of what we've been doing for the last year is trying to get out there and tell paddlers who we are and what we do. I think another important thing is that we worked on was our planning map. For a variety of reasons, the original, the digital version of it, we couldn't update, couldn't make changes. So we kind of had to start all over, and working with GoTrekker out of Saskatchewan and closely working with the park staff, I think we made a series of very important corrections. I think the map looks better. It's a little easier to read. And so that was a big deal for us to make all those improvements in the last year. Maps online. I think another piece that is really neat is that all of our maps that we sell are available online. We will have hard copy when you come to those shows that I mentioned, but you can also order it online, which is a whole lot easier than somebody sitting there putting maps in a box and mailing them to nowhere, Nova Scotia. And we formed an alliance with Lawrence Mills. Lawrence Mills had his own business, wabakimimaps.com, and he's now brought his organization into our organization, and we've joined forces. And the beauty of that is he has a great map, and he has the ability to make updates and corrections, which he continues to do. So it's been a great partnership. So those maps are available online. And then you get a sense of just how many maps that Lawrence has available. It's pretty well covers the park. All the major routes are in great detail and available online. Photo contest. This is something that MJ Blaisdell has worked very hard on. What are we on, Dave? Second, third, fourth year, I believe, something like that. Yeah, you're muted, Dave. I'll just talk for you. I think it's our fourth year, isn't it?
Second
year. Oh my God. Well, it's been pretty impressive. And the thing I think is really kind of neat about it is that we now have access to all those photos, and we can incorporate those into our website, and we're going to use it when we update our canoe guide. We're going to use some of those photos. And if you haven't been to the website to take a look at them, you really need to. It's pretty impressive, the work that's been done out there in the field. Forest management, and I'm going to get too far into this, but one of the things that we were involved in was the forest management plan for the Wabadowgang Nuping Forest. We actually served on that committee. I started it and Maurice finished it. But as you can see from the title there, we weren't very happy with the end result. In case you're not sure where that is, it's basically the area that's north of Armstrong, includes Dalton Lake, Caribou Lake. And the thing that disappointed us in the plan was in my opinion, it really didn't take caribou into consideration. And we know they're there. This is actually caribou scat from Dalton Lake. So we know they're there at this point. I'm just concerned that the plan is not really going to look forward and take care of caribou going forward. So forest management, well, here's why I'm concerned about the plan. What forest management does when it involves logging is build roads. And the road that you see right there is actually going north, basically out of Armstrong. It goes by Big Lake, Dalton Lake, Caribou Lake, and eventually it will come out almost to Campbell Lake. And the reason the two lakes are in red, those are historically caribou calving lakes. And when you have a road like that, it opens it up for predators to move through the landscape. And the reality is roads destroy caribou habitat. And so unfortunately, that's kind of where the forest management plan is taking the Wabadowgang and Nuping forest. And, you know, both Maurice has actually taken this over and ran it. And he'll talk a little bit more about the Conservation Committee, but it's one of our concerns. With that said, there's another something coming out on the landscape. Crown land is managed under a Crown Land Use Policy program, and each little zone has its own set of plans. 2616 is the area that is identified on this map, and they're going to take another look at that plan because the forest management plan is not consistent with the outline for where this unit of the Crown land is supposed to go. And they've invited all the stakeholders to be involved in it, and we're one of the stakeholders. So we will be engaged in that dialogue and discussion. And Maurice, I believe, is going to talk more about that a little later and towards the end here. But we sat through the forest management plan, and now we're going to be involved in the Crown use policy for this chunk of ground that's north of Armstrong. Again, that pretty much is the area around Caribou Lake. Advocating. We're going to see how this works, so bear with me here. This is going to be interesting. See if I can make this happen.
The government says that clear-cuts emulate fires. But fires don't leave behind roads like this. Government's entity also claims that caribou will eventually return here. That's an experiment that has not yet been proven, and research just shows that populations are continuing to decline.
If we don't take care of the forest, if we don't have a healthy environment, we're not going to have a healthy economy.
I feel that the provincial government are not doing enough to protect the caribou and make sure that they don't decline. Because they get pressure from industry, the forest industry always.
So you're not going to play the video?
Is it playing right now?
No.
Can hear it.
Oh,
We're getting the audio.
best I can do. I'm sorry.
People depended on them so much, we can't do it.
So unfortunately, this was the only caribou we saw. This right here.
And the sign says caribou not protected.
If you care about caribou, tell the government of Canada it's time to intervene. Go to the link in my bio and add your voice.
And I apologize if that video didn't come through. I can see it on my end. I don't know why it doesn't work at your end. And Maurice, why don't you just take 30 seconds and tell us a little bit more about that video, because you helped produce it and you were actually on it.
Well, it's 4 videos, Vern, that we did. So what I do in my work on the Conservation Committee as the chair of that is I make partnerships with other organizations. So I work closely with the National Defense and Research Council in the US, which is the largest environmental group in the USA. Then we worked with the David Suzuki Foundation, and we partnered to make a series of social media commercials. we did 3 days of filming to produce these little short 45-minute little commercials that we put on to not only our websites and Facebook pages, but also Instagram. And they're being used in all our partners, all their sites to bring awareness to predominantly we're looking at forest degradation. So we're highlighting the impacts that happen when you put in pipelines, hydro development projects, put in mines, and we're really trying to highlight the poor forestry practices that occur here in Ontario. And we've been working with a series of various environmental organizations right across Canada to highlight and come up with a working definition of what is forestry degradation, because in the scientific community and in government, one does not exist. So we have been trying to bring partners with that. And one of the key people that I work with here in Thunder Bay, Julie Bone, is a woodland caribou scientist with a PhD in this area. And she also works with NRDC. And this is an area that she has been working on for the last 4 years to try and work within the scientific community to get a definition. It's very critical when you're dealing with all these organizations that you're all on the same working definition of something in your discussion. So that's taken up a lot of time.
Yeah, so these were really really neat little short videos, and the Suzuki Foundation was the partner on this. And if they want to go see one of these, what's the best way to find one of these videos, Maurice?
Well, you can catch it all on all the various partners' websites, but it's on our website. It's on our Facebook page. I don't know yet if it's been posted on our Instagram, which is fairly new. So I would have to actually go look at it myself to see if it made it there. I don't know if anybody else here, if Dave knows if it's been posted yet. These are very important commercials. I wish we had greater exposure to it, because working with the Powerline Films, Simon Brothers is a renowned filmmaker who specializes in environmental films. So he's done a lot of work with Ontario Natures. He came up with that film Protecting 1 Million Hectares of Farmland. He's worked with the Council of Canadians. He did the Energy East Pipeline series of documentaries. He did a great full-length documentary called The Silent Transformation. He did all those series you see on social media and on television with regards to the Greenbelt video series. And he's done a whole bunch of other ones. Recently, he did one on the social experiment that the Conservatives killed in the first 2 weeks when they came into power with the Guaranteed Income Project. So anyways, Simon Brothers is a phenomenal filmmaker. I was very fortunate to work with him. And we're quite proud of these films that we made. And so we raised a little bit of money here with Friends of Wabakimi to contribute to our other two partners who put in the bulk of the money for the filming. But this is just an example of some of the work that your conservation committee is doing, and some of the things that some of the ways we're trying to educate not just our members, but the general public as a whole, is that we're trying to bring more education into the whole issue of woodland caribou, because as some of you know, with the increasing amount of roads that are going up into northwestern Ontario, into this area, every year the caribou tend to recede about 31 kilometers further north, according to the recent data from the scientific community. So we keep pushing them north, and eventually they're going to be extinct in this area at the rate that we're going with our mines, our roads, our pipelines, and roads. That's the biggest problem we have, because as most of you know, and woodland caribou, what they require is large tracts of old growth forests that are uninterrupted. And when you bring in roads, you introduce, you cut that, you open it up, you introduce opportunities for prey, such as wolves. And if you look at woodland caribou, they are unlike other caribou, like you find in Quebec or further north, not north, but further west. They don't congregate in these large numbers. So what you're mostly finding, especially in the summertime, is you'll find the female with her calves, and they're not able to protect themselves from wolves. So we have a number of issues. We've been working with on the caribou conservation portfolio. So I'm sure somebody else will talk about that because that's no longer in my under my portfolio. But we have a big stalling tactic by the Ontario government to put a lot of funding here. Myself, I've been working on the other end towards on the federal government side to take a look at what Ontario is doing and trying to determine whether or not Ontario's approach is going to work. And so far, the general consensus is no, what Ontario is doing is a failure, and for the most part, it's a stalling tactic. So we know we have pretty well everything we need to know about caribou. What we need is a decisive action plan in order to protect habitat for them to survive and flourish.
Why don't you hold that thought, Maurice? I'll bring you back and let me get to the end and we'll get you back on there. So thank you for telling, but these are neat little videos and again, it's a cooperative effort that Maurice did most of the work on it. Fundraising. We've initially, our fundraising goal this year was to raise money to help the park staff remove debris from Shabasquayas Lake and also to add more time for the portage rangers to go out and it was amazing. We raised that money in less than a month. And so now we've moved on to our second project, which is to help with the woodland caribou survey, which is a very ambitious goal on our part to use volunteers to go out to historical calving lakes to determine if the caribou are still using those lakes. And there'll be more information on that as we go forward. Sponsors. Is Andy? Andy's here, right, with Recreational Barrel Works. Would you like to introduce yourself and just take a bow for helping us tonight?
Yeah, I'm Andy Baxter, and we're honored to contribute to the Friends of Wabakimi, and we've paddled through Wabakimi from even when the kids were 6 months old. So we've done a number of the spots. I, in fact, proposed to my wife on Cliff Lake. So, so glad to be here and glad to help out.
Well, and thank you very much for what you do, Andy. Thank you very much. We also have several other sponsors on there, and I bet you recognize a lot of them. You may have worked with some of them. 2024. What we're going to do, we're going to go back to Toronto. We'll be there on February 23rd through the 25th. We're going to be at Canoecopia again. That date is a little off. I already mentioned the Woodland Caribou Survey Project. We're still working hard on that and more details to follow. MJ is here with us, but she's been helping coordinate the webinars, and I'm just going to rattle through them real quick. This one was already done. The paddling emergency preparedness was done on December 3rd. January 3rd, we're going to have the Winisk River, and the reason we're throwing that in is the park staff at Wabakimi are actually responsible for the Winisk River, and Jake Udenheimer is going to do a presentation on that. We also have the assistant superintendent talking about what the Wabakimi Canoe Rangers actually do, and that's part of what we raise money for, was to help keep those rangers in the field longer. I'm going to be working with the park superintendent, Shannon Lauer, on the 21st to talk about the fires, because I actually got caught in the fires and had to do an emergency exit this summer. And so I'm going to share my side, and Shannon's going to talk about how the impact on the park. We're going to celebrate on the 10th anniversary on February 11th. iNaturalist is a pretty neat program that helps you be a community scientist and actually log the stuff you see in the field. And so we're going to be working on that. And then on March 24th, when we think we're really ready, we're going to kind of unleash all the information about the canoe survey that I made reference to. And we'll have more information on the 24th of March on that. The other thing that's kind of important here, and this is something else that Maurice has played a major role in, board retreat. We've had, the board has talked about it and some key points about doing this. It needs to be a short, focused weekend. Need a consultant. We're going to do a lot of homework before we get there. September is probably when we're going to do it. The event needs to be in Thunder Bay. We're going to spend a little bit of money on it. And park staff and key volunteers should be involved. So I think there's a place for everybody in this. And it's going to give the board a chance to get together, keeping in mind that, you know, we have board members that have scattered across at least 5 time zones. So it's hard for us to all get to one spot, and we're going to try and do that next September. And what we're going to do is we're 10 years in, we're going to start planning for the next 10 years, maybe for the next 50 years, depending on how it plays out. But it's an important next step for the organizations to figure out where we're going next. Questions? And I'll let,
Vern,
yeah,
Vern, before we get into questions,
Go.
could I take control here and
Dave, you always have control.
do our random drawing? Let me say
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
Okay, let's see here. First of all, I want to say this is thanks to Andy Baxter. We're going to have a drawing for this 60-liter barrel and expedition harness package. And we're gonna do this drawing right now, and whoever gets it, Andy's gonna ship it to them, assuming they want it. So I'm sure they will. So let me stop that and go to, let's see here. I gotta pull that up now. There we go. It's all loaded. There's this website called random.org, and all the donors are loaded in here. And so what we do, and I've tested this a number of times, and we've done this before. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Brian Bainey gets the barrel harness and 60-liter barrel. So we'll send that information to you, Andy, and congratulations to Brian. So that's that. And as long as I have the floor for just a minute, part of the challenge of the organization is to build our active membership. We have at least 3 openings on our board of directors. And so anybody would be interested in joining us we have basically a monthly meeting. We hope board members will take on some little corner of the universe to help us get things done, like Maurice and MJ and Brian and others have done. But we need to build out our board of directors and bring them to our retreat in the coming fall. So if you have any interest in that, let us know in the chat or send us an email at info@wabakimi.org, and we'll get back to you. And if you want to talk about that some more, Vern and I would be happy to talk with you at length. So, okay, I'll give it back to you, Vern, for questions.
Questions. I'm open for discussion if somebody wants.
Questions or comments about anything. And you can unmute yourself if you're muted. We had a question from Cindy earlier. She said that she was looking for routes with non-motorized lakes. Does anybody have any comments about that? Staying away from the noise.
From my experience, there are a fair number of outpost camps in Wabakimi. So one idea might be to think about a potential route, but then Google the lake names of each of the lakes along your route. And it should come back if there's an outpost camp on that particular lake or not. You know, it'll show you XYZ outfitter has a camp or an outpost cabin or a lodge even on that particular lake. And at least, you know, your homework, at least from the commercial point of view, gets you a bit more educated as to whether there's going to be motorboat traffic possibly encountered on that particular lake or lakes on your route.
Well, my first suggestion is to simply use our planning map and then use our route maps, because everything is on there. So if you're looking to see if there's an outfitter, it's already on our maps. Then the further north you go, or to the west end, there's less outfitters. There's really nowhere that there's zero, except for when you get onto the rivers, there's a lot less. But that's another thing. So then, do you want to do whitewater? But we have, I think Vern had just touched on this, is that we have all our new maps that are out now, and all the maps. And I'm sure, I don't want to take this away from MJ if you're going to be talking about this, MJ, on the expedition committee, but a lot of work was done with Lawrence Mills. So our route maps are organized by canoe trips. And so you'll get a good idea of what's on there by looking at those maps.
Mary Jean, would you like to talk about the expedition committee?
Sure. In the recent years, the expedition committee has kind of focused its efforts on recommending certain routes that we have thought that needed more exploration, and we listed those on the website and just encourage people to do self-guided, trips on them. This year, we're turning our sights towards that Woodland Caribou Survey grant. So we're spending a lot of time working out the details of how that will be organized and so forth. And I can go into the grant a little bit, but the details we are working on. We're flying the plane or building the plane right now, and so I have limited amounts of information. But it's we applied for this grant, in the earlier this, not early this year, but a few months ago, and we've been working on the details for it since, and it's intended to be kind of a 4-year effort if we get it. We won't find out whether or not we get the grant. Well, we could find out anytime, but it's unlikely we will find out until almost near the season. So we will be pressed for time to, get things, all together. But it's intended to be like a 4-year effort where we would send, or people would go on self-guided trips, but we would give them opportunity to do some community science. And what that would look like would be, and this is an estimate still, it would be like groups of 4 going out in a specified area. And within that specified area, there might be assigned another specified area that they would go looking for evidence of caribou, looking for, and this would be after the calving season. So we would be looking for evidence of their presence, and they're gone. So we would be looking for scat or bedding areas or footprints or that kind of thing. And then we would have a protocol for recording that evidence, and that data would be all gathered up from each of the trips that go in to do that, and then put into a database of information that could be very useful to both scientists and policymakers. So we are currently working on, what would that look like? How would we determine, who would go on these trips? How would they be organized? What can we provide? That kind of thing. And the grant allows for, helping us to find staff to monitor and manage that effort and some basic supplies. But again, it's still self-guided trips, going in. So, and we would provide training for people on what the protocols are and what to look for, and how to do all of this. So we're currently working on all of that, and it's a great deal of work, but we have reason to think that we will be ready for the season at this point, and we're just hoping that we get the grant. If we don't get the grant, there's still a possibility we might be able to raise funds in order to do, a limited version of that. Not sure yet. So everything's kind of up in the air. Again, we're building that plane. We might be flying it while we're building it. So, so in any case, that's just kind of it in a nutshell for now, and there'll be more details as they get finalized.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about any issue?
I have a question if I can.
Certainly.
You have a lot of great projects planned. I'm just wondering if somebody could just speak generally about where your more successful fundraising efforts come from. Is it from private or corporate or government sources, that kind of thing?
It's basically individuals. A lot of people on this call have made donations. So, we started off with the Wabakimi project some 14 or more years ago, and that was the kernel of this beginning of this organization. And we have, we haven't done a lot of fundraising appeals like other nonprofits do. We've basically done an annual appeal for a specific project working with Wabakimi Provincial Park. Our next fundraising project is probably the first time we've tried to kind of branch out beyond that. As far as the organization is concerned, we get our funding from memberships, and we get funding from our map sales. And since we kind of have a little bit of the have cornered the market with maps, people come to, when they're planning a trip. We had a new member today. He joined, and then he bought a bunch of maps. And that's one of the main ways we've funded the organization. And since right now we're all volunteers, so we keep our overhead low, and we try to communicate a lot. And we've slowly picked up some business sponsors like Andy and Miriam with Recreational Barrels, and Bruce Heyer and with Wild Waters, and Don Elliott with Matisse Lake. And so we've been slowly growing our business supporter list. But basically it's been mostly individuals. We did receive in the last effort a very large donation from Jason Long and his coffee imports business. And that's kind of what put us over the top for this fundraiser we just concluded. So far, it's the paddling community that's stepped up to support us, and mostly on an individual basis. But that doesn't mean we couldn't reach out for more, more institutional or corporate support in the future. We'd like to.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Trip ideas or anything? Well, we wanted to give folks a chance to give us some feedback, and we're going to have another active year ahead of us. So we need volunteers for our booths at Canoecopia in March and Toronto in late February. So any expressions of interest in that will pass along to the folks in charge of those booths.
This is Cindy Dillon Schneider again. I just wanted to thank you all. I think you have been doing a great job, folks on the board. And although I'm sitting in the wings, I'm very appreciative of all the work you're doing and all the information you share. And I'm real impressed. So thank you.
So how many people are going to make it to Wabakimi this year? I'm
You know, my name is Russ, and I've been a member for a while, but I'm not very active. But I am presenting to a Boy Scout group on Tuesday night, putting together a PowerPoint with my pictures from a couple of trips up there and stuff. And they're going to ask me, so where should I go? And a bunch of years ago, we were fortunate enough, another friend and I, to spend some time with Uncle Phil, which is, I consider now a privilege. And he asked us to go on a route that they had just carved out. It was partially on Crown land. And anyway, so he hand drew a map and we went and did it. And then he came back and he was waiting for us down in Annette's Madison Lake because he wanted the intel from our trip. And it was just kind of fun. We got off the truck and there's Uncle Phil waiting for us. Well, what I'm asking for, so this trip was, we went to the bridge over by Little Caribou Lake, and then we crossed straight north and went up into Brockway Lake. And we carved out a route up in there, which was all pretty small water through maybe a dozen little lakes. And we came out on a long north-south stretch that was literally on the border of the park, and then went back south and went back to Little Caribou and back to the bridge. And we did it in the space of a week. When we got back, Phil's words to us were, "You were the first people to do that this summer." And this was the last week of July. But it was a wonderful route, and if you're familiar with what I've just described, I'd like to know if that is. I've not seen a map with that. It was a wonderful small water with pretty easy portages and awesome fishing.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I've actually thought about doing that route and recently pointed out to Lawrence Mills that we didn't have that. So I believe we have a page for that route now embedded in one of our map sets. And I could probably find that to make sure that's the case. And we could, if need be, we could actually get that up on the website as its own standalone little route where you enter Little Caribou and cross over and then head north up into that little. Did you do the whole little loop there of lake?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that actually, I'm intrigued by that route myself.
It was we did it in 2012, and I wonder if it has anybody been there since, and is it all grown over? I want to say there was about a dozen nice portages and one tough one, but oh well.
I seem to remember that Vince Fiorito made it up to Brockway Lake. I read that somewhere, but we haven't seen any other reports about that route. It probably doesn't get a lot of use, obviously.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's Crown Land route primarily. So, and it's in this area of concern that Vern was talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I've got two routes that I'm thinking about taking them on. One is they can take the train to Allen Water and work their way up to Smooth Rock Lake, and then take a right turn over to Funger Lake, and then Caribou Lake, and then Little Caribou home, and that's a nice route too. If they've got more time, I would send them up to Whitewater Lake and do a longer loop if they want to paddle, or do they want to fish.
Maurice, did you have anything to add to the conservation report?
I'm not sure. Vern basically took the wind out of my sails there. He covered what I was going to talk about. The only thing I can say is that I guess I've been on this portfolio now for over 2 years. I got sort of thrown into the fire with this. As most people are aware, we worked for multiple years on a 5-year forestry management plan, and that's where I came in. My key areas were the Hollingsworth South area and the Dalton Road area, because they're prime caribou calving areas. And Caribou North is a prime caribou area that was all going to be clear cut, valuable walleye and lake trout spawning areas. And our big defense was using Clupa at the time, because Clupa, I imagine most of you are aware of it, because a lot of you as paddlers are using the Crown Land Use Policy Atlas to research Crown land in terms of entry, exit points, what the area is designated as. It's very important if you're in central, southern, eastern Ontario as to all the designations they have for Crown land down there, because a lot of areas you actually can't camp on. Up here, we don't really have those particular restrictions to the degree they have in other parts of Ontario. But the main thing for us is that with Clupa, the priority there, especially in the area of G2616, is that its primary use was for commercial tourism and outdoor recreation. And in the event of a dispute, such as with forestry, commercial tourism and outdoor recreation would take precedent. So using that, MNRF chose to ignore it completely. We are astounded by this because we currently have a conservative government in power. This was created by, if people can remember, the Mike Harris Lands for Life practice that went on for 5 years, and most of the hearings were occurring up here in Thunder Bay at the cost of tens of millions of dollars. So we were kind of surprised that a conservative government would just shut down the conservative legislation. So that took a lot of the wind out of our sails, and we lost on all sorts of different areas within this forestry management plan. We went to 2 dispute resolutions, but we're still encouraged. We're still working, and what we have spent a lot of time this past year is on information and education for the general public, which we've, as I mentioned earlier, we've teamed up with a lot of NGOs to share the responsibility, because if you look on what's going on just in the one portfolio of one species at risk, if I just talk about caribou for a moment, that's occurring right through the entire boreal forest across Canada. So it's a really big issue. And of course, the federal government under the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change is heavily involved in that. And they've given all the provinces and territories the requirement to come up with their own protection plans, and they've given funding for that. And Ontario, just by the way, had previously received $10 million to work on that plan, and they did absolutely nothing, and all the money is gone. So they were ready to put a protection order in place, and ironically, we were somewhat involved in that because out of the blue, I had a call from the federal minister's office to ask if I was willing to participate into an announcement of a protection order against Ontario for woodland caribou. Then all of a sudden, weeks went by, then a month went by, I didn't hear anything. And then we find out through the media that Ontario was given an extension, and Ontario came up with a $29 million fund to do caribou research or caribou conservation. Interesting enough, that whole program is under review right now by the federal government. They have formed a committee of scientists, caribou scientists, and a few foresters to add into the mix to review what Ontario is currently doing to see whether or not it's going to have an impact and they're going to move forward. The big criticism right now is this $29 million. It's not really being coordinated. There is nobody who is basically working to oversee it. There is no particular hypotheses they're going to prove or disprove. They're not trying to identify what is lacking. So if you're a scientist and you're a caribou scientist, you want to ask yourself, well, what is lacking? What do we have to research? What are they looking for? Nobody's answering those questions. So it's being perceived as a stalling tactic. So that aside, we've been working with various partners to investigate that further. And then out of the blue, last week, we received a notice in the mail from MNRF indicating that the Crown land use policy for area G2616 is under review. So if we look back, the last time I believe, now I did have a slide up, but I don't think it's worth bringing up. I believe it was last reviewed in 2006. So now they're going to review it. And what that review means is they're going to look at what practices, what can occur in this area. So because commercial tourism and outdoor recreation was at the top of the food chain, and they know that we brought that up, and we know that we had one of our partners in this independently was threatening to do a lawsuit based on CLUPA. A lot of these issues were raised, and we suspect now the ministry wishes to clarify that and to strengthen their position. So they're going to be reviewing what can occur within CLUPA 2616. So that means, what does that mean? Well, that means that could be more cottage development. That could be more resource extraction. So they can define more what's going on in mining. As some of you aware, like some of the work that I do as well, is I'm monitoring the mining sector. So as everybody knows, here in Ontario, I believe it's 2035. You won't be able to buy a combustion engine new car. It's going to have to be zero emissions. So whatever that means, mostly electric. It could be hydrogen, could be something else. But you won't be able to buy an internal combustion engine at that point. So all the roadblocks are being released to get mining going. And in my case, I'm 40 minutes out from the city of Thunder Bay. They're going to have 2 lithium processing plants. Property's already been purchased, permits are all in place, the funding's in place. It's going, and now there's going to be a battery recycling plant built here in Thunder Bay. If you look at the whole North Shore, if you look at everything going out west, all the communities are getting ready to double their populations. Thunder Bay is supposed to grow by 80,000. This is all the mining sector that's coming here, or is here. I think there's 86 mining companies here now in Thunder Bay itself. So mining's a big issue. There's an awful lot of exploration being done. There is a mine that's Seymour Mines, an Australian company, is going to be developing a mine just east of Armstrong. Not in the, it's not real close to the park, but it's fairly close to the park, and it will affect areas that actually as all of you are aware, we have 17 parks and conservation areas around Wabakimi Provincial Park. If you make a big circle, and then you have this area of Crown land surrounding the park. So as I always say in my role is I'm rarely doing anything that is to do with Wabakimi itself, I'm always concerned and working on areas outside of Wabakimi, because what happens in the outside of Wabakimi affects Wabakimi. So if you look at a wolverine or a lake trout or a caribou, they don't know where the boundaries are. So, you know, we have to be concerned with what happens outside of the park boundaries itself. And, you know, it's simple things like a lot of us love paddling the Kopka River. Well, that's not Wabakimi. That's an independent provincial park. So there's a number of mines going on or being proposed also for the west side, close to Savant, and all the way up to Pickle Lake. So these are very, very close. So what does that mean? Well, mines, in my opinion, are somewhat better than forestry. Forestry does an enormous amount of damage with their clear cuts and then their monocultures in comparison to mines. But mines put a lot of roads in, they put a lot of hydro development in, a lot of infrastructure, but their impacts are relatively smaller than, say, forestry. But you combine that with pipelines, you combine that with hydroelectric development, you combine that with bigger growing communities, it all has a big impact. And these are just some of the areas that I'm monitoring. With regards to 2024, for myself, with this committee, I have to recruit more people. That's my big goal, is to recruit the committee. I do know I have means to go back and look at our members and send them out again. I've already done this a couple of times, but I'll do it again to send out personal emails asking people to participate. It can be as simple as an example, one of the things I do is I go into the Ontario government websites and under all the various ministries and the legislation, anything that's affecting the environment, species at risk and so forth, I register to receive updates. So anytime anything is being proposed, I get an update, and that's how sometimes I get ahead of things. But I need more people to be able to monitor what's going on, because the government doesn't send us a letter usually. We usually find out by other ways. Similarly, the Prospectors Association, the Mining Association, the Forestry Associations, all of them have their own websites, they have their own newsletters, they have their own printed papers that go out. All of this needs to be monitored. So I need a lot of help with monitoring. Similarly, there's conferences, a lot of conferences, but they're not all held in Thunder Bay. Mining does a lot in other places that affect Northwestern Ontario. They have conferences in Sudbury and Toronto, and they talk about everything that's going on in Northwestern Ontario. So we need a lot of help from people who can attend some of these, these conferences and help monitor media and help me write briefs, help me decide what is something that FOW should pursue. So for 2024, I would like to have a much bigger committee. What I have been focused on, sadly I was thrown into the fire, and what I quickly did is got myself a group of caribou scientists and foresters here in Thunder Bay, people I could meet with, sit with, and work with. And if anybody has ever gone through the forestry and mining legislation, it's thousands of pages to read. And when you participate in a forestry management committee, it's a 5-year process to sit on and to come up with the plan. And then it's a 10-year process to implement it. You're expected to stay on and see it to the end, and then you start over again. So it never ends.
And we thank you for your efforts.
Sorry to take up so much time.
Oh, no, it's really important. The forestry and the mining and all the impacts, and we're fighting for the greater Wabakimi area to preserve essential habitats. And we've had an impact, but obviously there's a lot more to do. So thank you.
I will stress on myself personally, my interest in FOW is to paddle.
Yeah, right. And I think that's true for a lot of people, and all of us, I think so.
And sometimes you can't do much but write letters. If you don't agree with something, write a letter.
Yes, but you also need to be at the table. I found it's really important to have a physical presence at all these meetings, so that you build partnerships. And the one thing that I stressed, Don, in doing with all the stakeholders out there is I first work on building relationships with these people, and I spent a lot of time listening to their positions. And only once I have a good understanding of their position do I engage them, and hopefully have them understand my position, because I don't always want to come across as the tree hugger paddler. I'm not a hypocrite. I drive a car. I don't have an electric vehicle. I use a lot of the resources that are being extracted up here. So I have to weigh both sides. I'm just simply looking for a balance and working towards that.
Bruce Robbins asks, is there anything a U.S. citizen can help with? Well, a lot of us are U.S. citizens, and we're supporting the organization and taking positions, writing letters, and it all adds up. We contributed financially to the Blake Moynes video project that Maurice talked about. So, and we're trying to fund our Caribou survey effort, and that's all things I think we can do to help.
One thing I will say from attending an awful lot of meetings in government industry is they are very interested in what Americans have to say, and they're very, very interested in the how we appear to Americans. Because if you take a look at just tourism and outdoor recreation, and then you take a look at where a lot of the resources that are extracted, where they go, they're going to the US. And the US is the biggest population of tourists that come to these areas. So never be, what's the word? Don't feel like you're the outsider giving your opinion. They actually want your opinion. So keep those letters coming.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments?
The only other thing I'll bring up, Dave, is that we will have the annual meeting of the Friends of Wabakimi at the Toronto Outdoor and Adventure Show on Sunday morning at a time, I think 10 o'clock, at a place to be determined. And then basically we will repeat that meeting or at least review those details at Canoecopia on Sunday morning, which I believe is March 10th. And we're going to try and go online with both of those, and we'll see how that works out. But you're certainly welcome to participate in the annual meeting.
Right. And Bruce Robbins says, "Oh, happy to send letters. Can you give the addresses and point of contact?" And we've done that before, and we will do it again. And we could probably put that on our next newsletter as well.
Well, before you go too far, when it comes down to the CLUPA review, people can register, and people can, even if they cannot attend, what's going to be happening with this review is they're going to be doing one-on-one interviews with people. And so as an example, I think, Dave, you were going to have a slide for us tonight to put that on. So you could register directly with Heather Nelson, either through her email address or her phone number, which you can also text on her phone number. If anything at all, you will then be on the email list and receive minutes. You'll receive emails. You'll receive copies of maps. You'll get all that information. I don't want to discourage anybody, but it is worthwhile just getting on and looking at the CLUPA planning guide, and also looking at the Crown Land Use Atlas, because it's a wonderful tool. As an example, from a paddler's perspective, you can get on there and make maps. You can get details of all the areas that you're looking at, and you can also get a lot of information on the area, geological information, forestry information, and so forth. But if you want to help, and you want to get involved, you can contact and register Heather Nelson directly. And I'm sure, did we already do that? Already put this up on the website and the Facebook page?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We will.
So we can do that very soon, and then you can just go there and get the information in order to register. The other thing, I had a conversation with Heather, and I suggested to her that it might be to their advantage to do something like a webinar with just friends of Wabakimi. And they could collectively get information from us with as many people participating as possible. So it would be just like this, but they use Teams instead of Zoom. So I'm excited about trying that with MNRF because it's never been done before, where everybody from Friends of Wabakimi could actually participate together.
Okay. Tom Mings has a question about the Toronto show. Does this sell out before the weekend of the show, or is he mixing those up with something else? Does the Toronto show sell out?
I don't think so. I think they just keep the doors open. They just keep pouring them in. And Andy's, I think, agreeing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no seats. And you may have, and parking may get a little tough, but they'll just keep packing you in.
Yeah, I mean, last year the line was almost equal, the line of coming in and the line of exiting.
Yeah, it's a big show. It's pretty impressive.
Okay, well, are there any other questions or comments for the good of the order? We appreciate everybody logging on and joining us tonight. And
One thing, if I could ask everybody a question.
yeah.
I mean, the one thing that I really enjoyed when I was new to Friends of Wabakimi is I really enjoyed being able to go onto the YouTube channel and to read all the trip reports. And so I'm just wondering if people find that really useful as well, if people are really making use of that. And if so, is there any way we can improve that, or would anybody have any ideas for us on that?
Forgive my ignorance, but are the links to those resources on the Friends of Wabakimi website?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, we have a trip forum. We didn't get near as many trip reports this year as we have in previous years. But there's quite a few trip reports there that are useful if you're planning a trip. Somebody had a question, sent us a question a couple days ago. They're in Winnipeg and they want to take the train over. So what are some good 9-10 day routes that accessible from the train line? And my response was, well, you can always, go up the Allen Water and come down and go out a number of different ways. Probably the trip that I would probably recommend the most would be the one that Todd Reich did a few years ago and made a beautiful 4-part YouTube out of it, where he went up the Allen Water to around Brennan Falls and then came down through Dagger Lake and out on the Nemo River. Super nice route. I've been up part of the Nemo River, and just seems like a great way to go in by train and do a big loop. That's very doable, and then come out at the train line where the Nemo River and Redhead Lake, and there's a platform there at milepost 44.1. So,
and that's another good thing, Dave, about our new planning map is all the markers are on for the train.
right. Yeah. Definitely some things you need to know though about the train.
Yeah, what days do they run?
Well, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And yeah, right. And also that the train can be 2 hours late, in extreme circumstances, it can be 13 hours late. You just have to kind of build in a big fudge factor, and you need somebody on the outside who can monitor it for you and give you some idea what's going on.
And you have to be an hour early because they will leave early. They won't wait, even though they know you're coming.
You want to give the train stop a lot of leeway, come both ways. So, yeah. Hey, this has been good. If you'd like to become more involved, let us know. We're reaching out as much as we can to try and say, hey, join our board, join our committees, join the conservation committee or the expedition committee. And because we're trying to build this organization so we can be a strong voice for paddlers and a strong voice for caribou and the habitat and all the species. So I'm going to say thank you very much tonight. I'm going to stop the recording. And if anybody else wants to ask any questions, we'd be glad.